back. It was such a pleasure last time, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I wanna acknowledge you are a veteran, and I want to appropriately, Sarah, and I want to thank you for your service to make this country a great place to live.
Thank you.
Some people are, just talking about make America great through lip service. You are actually service. And I was looking on your website, and it's such impressive to see how much. I should call you Captain Rick.
Yes, that's the right title for him.
Yes, Captain Rick, you got to do this every time. So I can't wait to hear about your experience and your story. I mean, golly, you must have accumulated so many stories, see so many wonderful things while you are servicing and doing great work for this country. So I'm gonna let Sarah go ahead and introduce her, and then I'm gonna tap in, introduce who I am for a little bit, just so the people who happen to stumble across this station platform and don't know what we are, what we're talking about, just get a little backdrop, and then we're gonna get right into you, and we're gonna let you do the talking.
Of course, yes, I will be happy to kickstart our show today. Everybody, welcome back. So thank you for tuning in. And in case you have not met me or see me, I'm Sarah M. I grew up in Cambodia. I experienced a wonderful life in my childhood, but when I reached college age, my country was turned upside down by the communist Khmer Rouge regime, and my life was pretty much almost destroyed. And with God's help, I was able to survive and able to escape from captivity and eventually escape from the country. So now I live in a beautiful Florida in United States, and I cannot be more content than this. So I'm very content and just so grateful to be here. And I published my story in my book. It's how I survived the killing fields. So if you ever need an inspiration or a gift for somebody, just reach out to me at my website, sarahim.com. So back to you, Lee.
Thank you, Sarah. So my name is Lee Tran. I'm the other half of the co-host of the host of this show. We started this March 24th last year, right at the pandemic lockdown. And the reason that we were able to start this show, thanks to Rick Rhodes, our guest today. So I had the privilege of sharing the same NSA chapter with Rick. And I remember sitting next to Rick, and after I introduced myself with that 30-second pitch, he passed me a little note, like a little schoolboy. He was passing me the notes saying that you need to know this woman named Sarah M. She was also a former refugee from Cambodia. So right after the meeting, I connected with Rick, and I didn't know Rick at the time either, but I was happy to know that somebody out there, survivor of the killing fields, know this gentleman named Rick Rhodes. And, I felt like, wow, this is going to be a great connection. So that was like maybe October or November or something. So I contacted Sarah, and we went back and forth with our email, and we didn't meet until February, Valentine's Day, at the NSA meeting. So I told Sarah that I'm going to be there. So we met her. And that's when March, when everything happened, and it's such a serendipity, I call her up and say, let's get on and calm people down with all this thing going on. We've been through it, and we want to use our experience to encouraging people that, things going to be okay. So thanks to Rick, that's why we're here a year and 3 months later. So my story is I was also a former refugee from Vietnam, a neighbor country from Cambodia. And Sarah's life and my life is happened to be very parallel. I mean, we are in the same time when Khmer Rouge invaded. So was the communists that from the north took over the south. So we were living under oppression for 4 years before my parents decided that that's no future for us if we stay in Vietnam. And with a whole year of planning underground, he got us and another 495 people out of Vietnam. So our boats were sailing to the sea, not knowing that if we're going to die, we're going to live, how we're going to get out on a boat that's not seaworthy to charge out to the ocean. But ho and below, we made it after 7 days of, of pirating 4 times and 8 months in the refugee camp. But I am grateful and content that my journey had a beautiful ending. Last year, I wrote my memoir telling the story. So you can look at my history, my family history on my website, leetran.com. And if you want to connect, go ahead and reach out and connect with us. But today, I want to say that Rick has returned. He has been on our show one time last year and with another person. So today he's coming back. And I just realized he's a veteran. And looking at his profile, he's been traveling 48 states when he was 20 years before, I mean, right when he was 22 years old. So obviously he has seen a tons of things. So Rick, welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you again for your service. So tell us a little bit about your childhood. What made you decide to be in was that in the Navy or in the Army? Yes. And tell us your journey. Give us a little snippet of, what you've seen and what have you done. I'm sure there's so much, but just the skeleton of it.
Well, I did visit all 48 states fairly young age. The first time I went to New England, I actually walked there from like the West Virginia area on the Appalachian Trail. So I was always going on different paths. So I went the road less traveled. Some people say I did. And yeah, that's probably true. So the first time I got to Connecticut, New Hampshire, not New York, Vermont, that was New England. I had walked there on the Appalachian Trail. It was the summer of 1972, and there was a big storm that sat right on that part of the country called Hurricane Agnes, and it just dumped rain and rain and rain for weeks and even months on end. And I've never had dry feet, so that was the first time I got to New England. Then later on in college, that was my freshman year. After my freshman year in college, my first vehicle was an old used motorcycle. And I took that all the way to Wyoming and Montana and a few other places. In those days, I'd stop at every bar, especially at nighttime. I couldn't get a flavor of the area, which is not the smartest. I've grown out of that habit, thankfully. But I get to get a flavor of the country, and I love the country. So I went from Montana to New Mexico and went down. And a year later, I'm going with a friend, and the two of us in college made it all the way to California and Oregon and Washington. And so by that time I'd been everywhere except I think I visited every state. And later on I got a bigger bike, newer bike, a 750 Honda, and went all over. So I've never been to Alaska or Hawaii. And then
all of that before you joined the military.
Right, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a travel bug. A friend of mine in grad school said, I'd go to St. Louis to get a loaf of bread. And he's not that far off. I was living in Blacksburg, Virginia at the time when he said that. And then I was stationed in the military at first place was at Fort Belvoir doing my basic. And then I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And I had the second motorcycle, big at that time, a 750 Honda, which is a really good sized bike, which I had for a third of my life at the time when I sold it. The rest kind of busted down. And I remember taking a trip southwest of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where I was stationed. And I was about maybe an hour or two southwest, and the hair started standing up in the back of my head on the bike. And I was drinking a beer out of my spare helmet, and just kind of happy-go-lucky. And I said, what the hell went on here? There's something happened here. And before I started reading the plaque, before it's the place it is today, it was the battlefield of Shiloh in Tennessee, southwest Tennessee. A heck of a battle. And they lost more men in that battle than every battle before that in American history. And I started reading every plaque on the side of the road I could. And I felt all of a sudden, the beers went away, and I felt very humbled being a very special place. And this is when I was in the Army as a young lieutenant at Fort Campbell. And that's kind of the beginning of my expertise, not expertise, but my love of American history. And I feel very honored being on hallowed ground at times, as I sure was then. So the Battle of Shiloh really got me just going to that battlefield by happenstance. I didn't even have it planned out. They were not the big, things they are now. And then years later, I got my graduate degree, and I was working for I was living in my car for a while in Florida, doing really menial work. And then I finally got a good white collar job with the federal government. And I was in Washington D.C. and at those days I couldn't really buy a house or anything. So I said, a year from now, I'm not going to pay rent. I'm going to do something else. And I lived on a boat. And I lived on a boat for, God, how many years? Well over 20 years, 3 different boats, actually, taking boat people. And, but it was very interesting. Yeah, it was
I love it.
Cold in the winter. Everybody would say, oh, when you're living on a boat, how romantic is that? You don't know anything about living on a boat. It's not romantic. It's cold, going out and do your laundry, but I wasn't paying rent. I had a boat instead, and I was living in the Potomac River. And it was, I had to go out and do laundry every time. It was, and the thing would eat me up as people say, oh, how wonderful that must be. And I'm going, no. And the only person, I was talking to Ruth earlier today, and the only person that realized that's going to be a job is my grandfather, God bless his soul. He lived to be 98 years old. And he said, you know what you're doing, grandson? Jumping on a boat, because he had done a lot of that as a young man himself. He was a French Canadian. He had taken the rails all the way from Quebec.
It's in that genes.
Yeah, it is that gene. To Vancouver and back. And he was a great little old man. I loved him. And we'd sit down there I'd go to Quebec and visit him. And he knew every darn boat going up and down the St. Lawrence River, what it was carrying, the trains. He knew what they all were doing. And I guess it is that gene. He said, you're going to live on a boat? Even in Washington, D.C., I wouldn't live in one in Canada, but Washington, D.C. is not so warm in the wintertime.
No.
And he
so
really proud of me. Yes.
So let me backtrack a little bit. So is your traveling bug that is getting you to join the military, or what made you join the military, and what do you do? Were you traveling a lot when you were in the service, or and when did you get out?
Not really. I had a commitment when I went to college at West Virginia. I had 4 years I was an ROTC.
Oh, ROTC, yeah.
I had a 4-year commitment.
Okay.
And afterward, I said, I'm gonna do my 4 years and get out. And that was probably a big mistake. But at the time, I was young, and and so the traveling, the military was on the side, but I was stationed at Fort Campbell and Fort Belvoir, and I did get one opportunity to go to Europe for an exercise back in 1976. And I didn't realize how, when I was looking at when I was in the military, this isn't this is different. And I was a young and immature, but I still liked the traveling. But the military, I did my 4 years and got out and went to grad school. But looking back on the military, I'm thinking, you know what? Why? I was immature when I was even, and I have a lot of respect for the military too today. And thank God I have the VA too, because years later I went in the Peace Corps in Ecuador. And that was more dangerous, I almost lost my life.
Than the military itself.
Yes, it was. I got malaria, and I wrecked, a couple limbs, 3 limbs actually, two knees and a shoulder. And the Peace Corps said, oh, sorry, but you didn't do this in the Peace Corps. I go, what do you mean I didn't do it in the Peace Corps? So thankfully I had the VA, which I was at yesterday again. and they took care of me. And I was like, at least I have the VA. So I have a lot of respect for the VA, the military, the veterans of all sorts. And
But you are also, so you are an author of how many books? 7 or 9? 10 books, and mostly history, history of America, or
not really. No, I living on a boat for how many years? 1985 to till the time I went into preschool, and then after I came back, really from 1985 to 2005, 20 years I lived on boats.
Wow.
And
I don't know how you did that.
It was cold. I was younger too. I was 20 years younger. I stopped it. But what was your question again, Lee?
Oh, I'm just asking that what's the love of your historian? You're writing a lot of history.
Well,
and
yeah. No, I wrote boating guides, and is one of the first. Only my 10th book is history. And
okay.
I sailed down to Honduras. I worked on the North American Free Trade Agreement, and that could be a long thing. And afterward, I asked my boss. I said, "Boss, can I take a year off without work or without pay?" And his second reaction, not his first. He says, "Okay, you can go." And that's where I sailed down to Central America twice, and into Cuba too, and all over the Eastern Seaboard with different boats. And got me into writing boating guidebooks. And one of the things in boating guidebooks was history. I said, well, who slept here? Who lived here? And these people who read my books, and your history in your books and your regional history is very good. We like it. We love that kind of stuff. I don't think too much of it. I loved it too. But I also had navigation. Okay, you're going to avoid this. You go to this marina, they got a special deal on Thursday nights. So you avoid this shoal in the water. I knew all that stuff too. But I also wove in history. I had a certain formula for writing my books. And one of them is history. And then I wrote 9 books, a few of my updates. And I didn't do anything for 5 years. And I looked at the country and I go, man, I don't like what I'm seeing. And I know a lot of history already, all regional history. And the last book is the one this one here, They Made It. Where is it? Well, They Made America Great. 31 legacies we're repeating today. And people, I said, this is what I do really good. And I really love it. I love the history. And so I started, writing a history book. The 31 people I came up with came to me like that. And they all seem to connect. They start out with Ben Franklin. And sometimes there are groups of people, like the 9/11 first responders, which were many on flight 92 or something, and the other 3 airplanes. They all, lo and behold, they all kind of connected from one to the other. Not all of them, but many of them had connection to the next one. And how that happened, I really don't know, but I did that. And I think this is what really, it's the antithesis of a lot of what's going on now in the country. We have a lot of issues. And people gave up so much, and they all of them, almost without exception, went through hard times. I mean, a few more presidents like John Quincy Adams and Harry Truman. I love Ulysses S. Grant. I play him sometimes, about his humility, his perseverance, and I love what he did in the Civil War when the South was beaten. He didn't rub it and stick their nose in the ground. He saluted. His men were out celebrating, and Grant said, "Knock it off. These are our countrymen again. We're going to reunite. We're not going to stick their nose in the ground, or they're sticking in their eye." Another guy I love, it's also a Civil War guy, was Lieutenant General Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. He had also at Appomattox Courthouse. So these two guys connected right away. They knew each other. Grant said to Chamberlain, "You take the surrender of the Confederate troops." I think it was April 15th, right a couple of days after Lee surrendered on April 12th to Grant. They had a formal ceremony, and Chamberlain said, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to salute him." And all the other Union generals said, "You can't do that. That's the enemy." And Chamberlain didn't listen to him. And when they came forward in Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, he got ordered his men to salute the vanquished Confederates. I have to go to that spot. It's on the, believe it or not, it's northwest of Appomattox Courthouse, and I had a tear in my eye. I knew what happened there, 260 years before. And that's what makes America great. Some of the things that Chamberlain did, he didn't stick it in the enemy's eye. He built them up afterward. And just think how much that did to heal the country. We were badly wounded after the Civil War.
Right.
Guys like,
it's not easy to reunite a big war, and I have to tip my hat off to you because I've learned a lot of things that from the emails that you sent out. And that's why I thought you were a historian, because you talk so much about history. And I guess this is part of your last book, maybe. I
Yes.
didn't know that you were doing so long, writing so many books about boats and, and other things. But I just thought it's really interesting that your point of view is just so right on, so many of them. And I'd love to hear more.
I have a lot of stories. My boating guide, they're thicker in my last book. They're like 3 times thicker, and I can knock them out in a year. This dang book, it took basically, it's backwards, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. It took basically, how'd you do yours? It took basically almost 2 years. The research is smaller. I read 100 books to put this together. It's not about me. It's about Americans that did the right thing in tough situations. And I thought, well, I can write a boating guide in a year. This thing, much thinner, but it's just packed full of information. Harry Truman's another one of my characters. I read about 3 or 4 books, including David McCullough's on his. And there was a lot of research. It's not personal. Yeah. It's like, I like John.
It's factual stuff. It's in the history.
Yeah,
it's factual stuff. It's footnoted where I read it. And it was a passion of love. I saw what was happening to the country, and I think we have some. I didn't like either one of the people running for office, several years ago, and I thought these are great people here. Some of them are politicians. Some of them, one guy is just a missionary. Two guys are doctors. A couple of military people. The Wright brothers. I'm sure everybody's heard of them. Inventors. And these are people that they didn't have it easy. They didn't have it easy, but they did the right thing in tough times. I don't know if it ties in with contentment, but perseverance is probably a better word. Ulysses Grant is one of my favorite examples of perseverance, because he was, just an average guy. He failed at everything in life except marriage and war. And so those are the type of people that I found that are like, wow, people, I don't know about these people. They don't stick it in their enemy's eye. You want to call them the enemy? They don't have enemies. They have enemies. Sure, they have adversaries.
Right.
They treat them with dignity, not like you see today. And so I have just loved history from back when I was visited that thing in Shiloh, but I can't get enough of it nowadays. But I really started out in boating guides.
Yeah, I think great leaders are the people who make peace and who make others feel good, even though that they gotta be able to bring people together, and that's what great leaders do. They don't divide the nation. And we have seen that, and it was really frightening for me to see the country polarizing and drifting further and further apart. So your voice of reminding us what our great founding fathers and all the historians did for this country is really important.
It is, and as you two being distinguished Toastmasters, congratulations. I gave a Toastmasters speech Monday night, and another person who just does exactly what you're saying, Lee, is George Marshall. Not many people know of him, but he and Harry Truman started the Marshall Plan and the European Recovery Act, I think it was. And after World War II, Europe was devastated. They were, especially Germany, there were tens of thousands of people homeless, and they're another madman could take over in the same situation after World War I in both Italy and Germany. And thanks to the Marshall Plan, the United States stepped out of its selfishness and helped a big part of the world, Europe. And that stabilized Europe and created great trading partners for us.
Yeah.
We exported to them, they exported to us. Both economies grew. And that was, I think, one of the better, now some people don't like, I think it was one of the better things. It was a large percent of our GNP, about 5% back then, but George Marshall and Harry Truman did that and made the world a safer place. There hasn't been a real, European war because of that. Thank God.
You always want to have allies, right? You can't be stand alone in no matter how big you are, how strong you are, you always need allies, just like us. Now, I have a confession to make. I don't like reading about wars. I don't like it's just too complicated. I'm a very simple person. I just want to read about love. I just want to read about supporting each other. I want to read about simple life. And war always frightened me. And someday maybe I'll dig into the the history historians and learn from them. But I think the war is so much nicer when you're supporting each other than just keep put down people, threaten people, want to just, show your fits and dominate. And those are the things that it's frightened me. And I want to run away from that.
Well, you two ought to know. And I wish more Americans would listen to you two and listen to your wonderful. Both of you have wonderful. I haven't read your book yet, Lee, but both I know Sarah's story, and both of you two have a wonderful story. And that's one thing that's the strength of our country is people from other countries. I don't want to use the word immigrants, but coming across. I was in the Peace Corps, and it really bugs me. I saw how poor people are down there. I saw how hard they work to try to get ahead. And it ripped at my heart. And
Yeah.
I was in Cuba too. I sailed into Cuba twice back when it was illegal, 3 times actually. And I said, oh my God, we got to help these people. I mean, you can't treat them. They're human beings, but thereby by the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
And I love it when immigrants come to this country. I think it's a strength of this country.
It is a strength. And a lot of time immigrants contribute a lot more than they take. I know in the very first maybe 5-10 years they need help. They need some sort of support to build that education, to build that foundation, but eventually they are grateful. I mean, I have actually seek out to people who sponsor our family 40 years ago, and I want to go back and properly thank them for what they have done for us at the moment that were at the rock bottom. We didn't know anything. We didn't know anyone. And they were totally stranger, took us in and gave us hope and gave us, the human side of what refugee is just like human. They love us for who we are as a human, not, like a hand down or somebody that they look down to us. And for that, I think that it is very important, for when I write my book, it really helped me understand a piece of history from my own country and from my own people, even from my own parents and me. I mean, it's like, so much I didn't know. And like I said, I'm not a person who really draw into understanding wars and whatnot, but those are actually the things that determine to the little puny life that we are in, because we are depending so much on the big government, on the people who hold the power. You know what I mean? It's just like, it just so much, it domino effect in so many levels. And I wish more people understand history, and I will do more of that eventually.
Yeah, I think understanding the immigrant situation, blocking ourselves out is so stupid in the long term. Ronald Reagan even said, "We're the shining city on the hill with the doors open to anybody who got the will and the heart to get here." Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Gosh darn! Look at the COVID situation. How many doctors in this country do embrace stuff that are foreigners, Indians especially.
Right.
All countries getting smacked badly. They're over here trying to help us out. God bless.
Yeah.
I'm at the VA. There's a lot. There's a good amount of foreign doctors, and I always thank them for coming here. It's not like we don't want to be isolated. We're part of the world. You are. I think this is controversial, but I'll say it. I think you are to some extent your brother's keeper. And if your brother's in trouble, you try to help him out. Gosh darn, that's only Christian or Judeo-Christianity. And I just think, like saying it's all about us and keep them out of here. No, don't you get it? So make us stronger. So what? They don't have the same color skin you do. Big deal.
This country's foundation, it was built on immigrants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will have to say that there are a lot of religion organization that have it. They embrace the people that come, that need help, need service. So a lot of church band together, work together to support the newcomers. So I see that is wonderful. So compared to my country, we don't have that kind of support. from the people. So I'm talking about the regular people, not government. So government, they have their own agenda and all that, but the people that love and welcome the newcomer and help whatever they can. So I just cannot forget the kindness that they show at the beginning of us arriving in the country. So it's very important.
I agree.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. Like I said, I lived in South America and I visited Cuba. People wanted me to sneak them home on my boat. I go, and but I sure, in Cuba, people really did work hard. I mean, this is back in the 90s and they'd do anything for all day long for a few pesos or pesos. What do they have? Whatever they have, dollars, I think. But and I said, God sakes, then I worked on the NAFTA for the federal government, and at nighttime I would sneak out. I wouldn't sneak out, but I wasn't supposed to. Go out to the streets and the bars and the little shoe shine boys, and I knew a little Spanish. And I talked to them and I said, my God, we got, these people are just like you and me, but they're trying even harder. They don't realize we're fat, dumb, and happy, to use an expression here in the United States, that we don't, and to think that we're so superior to anybody, we're just lucky. And we should be humbled. We shouldn't be like pounding our chest saying we're better than you. And
Well, I have to say that out of all the countries out there, I think Americans get the biggest heart. Not because I live here, I'm not being biased, but I think, being in a refugee, I know that Americans still the best country in the world that help toward humanity. I don't know the current situation. I mean, the last couple of years has been really heart-wrenching to see how America denying a lot of people, and that hurts. But I have to say that, we always come back stronger than ever because we are a good country.
I hope that continues. You got a good point there. Yeah. But I think one good thing to do is everybody ought to go overseas and not stay at a 5-star resort. Go down, and I did a lot of that in my younger day. I take a plane ticket to any dozen different Latin American countries, and I only had a rental car. I didn't know where I was sleeping that night, and I'd go all over, and I ended up in a little Tenedor or a Comedor place to eat, and I think I didn't even know the language that well. I eventually got a little better at it. And I think, wow, this is eye-opening, and most Americans don't want to do that. And I think
the younger generation do. They do a lot of backpacking in Vietnam, I think.
I think you're right. When I was on a boat and went to Central America, it was very easy to find, they find kids with backpacks.
Yeah.
They'd want to jump on the boat, goes to another country. And I go, sure, you're more than welcome to those kids today.
Well, they're still young. They didn't know what dangerous is. I would never do that.
That's part of it. That's part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
They are just like you, Rick, when you are in your early 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I went in the Peace Corps. I was researching a book on Honduras, and I was going to some small little town, and I heard of the Peace Corps. I didn't know what it was, and I was already in my mid-40s, and I was talking in my broken Spanish to rich, Honduran, and another kid comes up and he starts talking. He's helped me translate a little better. So, what are you doing here? I'm getting out of the Peace Corps, and I started talking to him. And I go, wow, this is the best in America. Young kids going out and volunteering and getting to learn another language, getting to learn another culture.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, this young man got me thinking about the Peace Corps too. I said, well, do they take old guys like me? And I was already.
How long were you in there?
I was in a year and a half. I got medically separated a little bit early.
In Honduras?
No, I was in Ecuador.
Okay.
I had contracted the worst kind of malaria you can get, and I almost died of that. Wrecked 3 limbs. That's why I just had a knee replacement, both knees and a right shoulder.
Wow.
So I was and then the worst part of it, I was, 49 years old, and you want to get a job at 49 years old? After you've been making
challenging.
Yeah.
So now you are a speaker. You're a writer. You're an author. You're a speaker. What else don't you do?
Yeah, I've had the adventures. God bless him. I'm still here, but I remember having malaria and thinking, oh boy, this is it. I'm not going to see the morning. And I asked God to keep me alive. I'll never sin again. Well, you know who broke that deal?
So
But-
you haven't since ever sinned, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But he kept his deal, but I didn't. So,
Most likely write some more books.
oh, I don't know about this last one's, kind of been rough financially. And it's a great, I've had Leon Panetta gave it a nice write up. It's the, ex-CIA man, chief of staff. So, but
Mhm.
it's a different market than it was when I was writing my boating guides. I could write my boating guides and I'd sell them out after about 4 or 5 years, less than that sometimes. This one is like,
Yeah.
I
I think COVID's got a lot of publishers and authors out there. COVID turned people, right, lots of books are out
I
since
know.
last year. So it's a lot of noise out there. You're just gonna have to really push hard. But I think it's just so exciting. You have definitely a very exciting life. I hope you write a book about all your adventure about you.
Yeah, it's about time.
I know about it. If this thing can't sell, but
No, that's about the history. It's about you.
well,
Yeah, you've seen quite a bit, and for 20 years on the boat, you are entitled to that name, boat people.
cold in the winter, hot in the summer. Yeah,
Were you by yourself, or who were you with?
that's another great story. I left the Keys, or I was in the Florida Keys going to Cuba both times, and I had no crew. And I did have one guy come on in Key West and made it Havana, but then I got to Mexico, I had no more crew, and I was going through the pretty rough sea there, Yucatan Channel, and you can't stay up all night by yourself.
Yeah.
So I put an ad up in the youth hostel, and I got some wonderful young people, really to tune, like to this day I'm still in contact with and call them close friends. And you're on a boat for a while, people you don't know, and some of them will turn out to be wonderful. Many of them will turn out to be wonderful. And you almost give your life for them. If something really got in trouble, if they fell overboard, you do everything. And that's a real. I learned a lot doing that. I wrote a story about finding helpful crew, and it's the wonderful young people I met in Central America. They were Americans mostly, one Canadian, one German, one Dutch, but I had no crew at certain points in the trip, and how am I going to get back to Washington D.C.? It's like 3,000.
You trained them.
Yeah,
You trained them.
I did, and there's some real tricks to that. Some of them one or two of them knew how to sail, but some of them didn't. And that
We're gonna have to have you come back and tell us about the boat story, because I'm just dumbfounded. How can somebody floating on a device constantly like that for almost 20 years? And I don't know. It's just mind blowing for somebody who actually choose to do that.
it's a forced
You flow,
choice.
you
Yeah.
flow for how long? 1 week? 1 week
Yeah,
was enough?
1 week, right?
1 week and 1 year, not much difference. You can do it for a week, you can do it for a year.
But in the big ocean, I don't know how big was your boat. It's got to be like constantly feeling seasick, because I don't know how big was your boat.
33 feet.
Okay, so it's not that huge. So
No.
you cross, yeah. Oh, I'm just thinking about it. I got motion sickness already.
Oh, stop it. Yeah. But I was pretty good. I got seasick a couple times, but not on that boat. But if I'm out for a week or longer, even a couple of days, I don't get seasick. That's a blessing. I think it happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think one of the more side interests that I had is I picked up people that didn't know anything about boating. Young people, 20 years younger than me. I was in my 40s; they were in their 20s, but generally speaking, and I had a wonderful being an instructor, and I was an instructor at the sailing school in Annapolis before that, helped a lot. But it's also, I got some wonderful stories from that. People didn't know anything about boating, and we went out in a storm, and they came back beating their chest. They did it.
I see this movie. I watch movie, and it's scary when you're in the storm and you're watching the movie, and it's like, oh, why people want to do that?
Usually the boat is stronger than the captain and the crew. 99 times out of 100.
Oh, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, but it must be very interesting, because you probably have seen so many ports, so many stories. So the boat stories, maybe sometime we're gonna have you come back and and map out all those things that you did in different places. And it just lots of questions that I have for you, but
Well, you know, like any journey, it's really the people you meet along the way. You might not
Mhm.
meet anybody for a week on a boat at sea.
Don't you feel lonely out on the boat by yourself?
Sometimes, you know, but then I know there's a port somewhere at the end of that thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm either going to raise hello, listen to people.
So you are still kind of biting along the coast. You're not too far out in the ocean, are you?
Well, actually, there's a couple of places I went from Cuba to Mexico. You're out for about 2 days. And then when I was coming back, I jumped out at Beaufort, I jumped out at Fort Pierce, Florida, and I put in at Beaufort, North Carolina. We were out at sea for 3 days, and we were hundreds of miles offshore, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't have refrigeration. This was back in the 90s.
Oh.
I didn't have an EPIRB, which is something to go overboard. So I had I had an old boat. They were a lot, even back then.
Okay, so make my boat trip does not. Oh my goodness. So, but one question, you know, I'm gonna ask you. No pirates, right?
No pirates. I didn't want to see them. You're worried there about the drug trade. Somebody you run across a drug transaction.
Yeah.
See, I've heard of people doing that, and I've heard of ways to handle that. And thank God, and you know, there's certain places you wouldn't boat, like Colombia, for that reason.
Yeah.
I never had any problems there. And you know, I've heard of it happening. I never carried a rifle or weapon except a flare gun, which might actually work. But I've never carried anything like that. And I figured more often it has a chance to be misused and hurt somebody. And I've heard stories like that. So no, if I smelled something going down, I didn't like to smell it. And you get good at that, especially in Latin America. You can smell trouble sometimes. Somebody, I don't like the smell of this guy. It's a great story in Honduras. I met a guy. He was a Brit, and he came down to Honduras with just a couple dollars in his pocket, and I smelled a good guy there. We were drinking beer at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I said, "No, that's interesting." And he was telling me some stories, and I don't want to get into there, but I smelled some. Your instincts when you travel around Latin America, probably any third world country, but I did around Latin America, get pretty sharp. You know, you can smell trouble, and you can stay away from it. You can sometimes you got to just take it luck, but you get a good extrasensory variable on that when you and as you come from a third world, you probably smell like, you know, this guy's bad news. Stay away from him.
Well, I can say is Captain Rick, you are a very brave man with many interesting stories, and you have probably lived a very, very interesting life, a free spirit. Your choice is just wonderful, and I'm sure you have so many things that you can benefit other by writing your book. So, you know, I want to thank you for coming on to share with our audience and share with us this conversation. And I just think that you're so brave to want to be on the boat for 20 years almost. Oh,
it's not that bad.
Well, you know what? It's a choice. It's a choice.
Yeah.
And if you are content with what you have, what you choose,
right,
then it's not that bad.
Right.
Well, thank you again. Thank you, our audience. I know that we went a little over time, like we have been for the last couple weeks that we keep going over time, but we have a really great conversations, and you know, it's really interesting, and I hope you find it helpful and useful and entertaining for the